Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, fellow gamers, everyone. This is Days, and I'm so happy for what we've just seen. This is Sekiro's Shadows Die Twice analysis video. What a trailer. I would have never expected the reveal to happen so spontaneously in the Microsoft press conference of all conferences, which ended up to be quite the conference. And so today I'm here to propose a few questions and interpretations in an attempt to find answers based on the available information we have so far. So let's get on with this. Let's get the narrative and the setting of the game out of the way first. Using this article from GameRat as a source, Sekiro's story focus will be on an ancient cult that has been using farmers for their dark rituals since hundreds of years. This sect is terrified of the end of the world, and they sacrifice people at their shrine of blood, while also carrying out experiments on them. Many of the creatures will be the result of those experiments. As far as the main character is concerned, the League claimed that players will start the game as a disfigured person on the brink of death, who is saved by a mysterious leader who gives you a new face, which will prompt a character creation feature, and the figure who saves your character replaces the missing arm with a multifunctional prosthetic arm with multiple uses, which I'll talk about throughout the video. With regards to the setting, it's clearly inspired by the Sengoku period of the 16th century in Japan, similar to what we saw in Nioh, but with Fromsoft's unique touch and Miyazaki's superior level design. Not to say that the level design in Nioh wasn't good, but Miyazaki-san sure makes it different. Alright, now, let's get into all the fun stuff. This trailer has pretty much confirmed a bunch of things regarding mechanics and gameplay features. So in the beginning of the trailer, we see the player character losing their arm. Don't worry, we'll get to the Activision part later. Let's focus on the good stuff for now. So here's our first look at what we know as trick weapons. Obviously they're not called trick weapons in this game. This particular weapon is an axe, which we see the character here break the guard of the NPC and take a riposte. The riposte and the guard break seem to be unique to that weapon, and it seems to come out of the prosthetic arm, obviously if you haven't noticed that. I'm guessing that's either a specific item or upgrade that can be found in the world. It's also important to note that each weapon will have its own special transformation and abilities, as well as a parry and a riposte animation, as well as some weapons will have 2 to 3 transformations according to the leaks. Though I believe the grappling hook used to swing around is always available no matter what weapon is equipped, and the reason why I believe that is because the grappling hook, which also comes out of the prosthetic arm, is supposed to be a staple in which the world is traversed, as seen in the trailer. Though I could be wrong, and there could be some option to replace the grappling hook with another item for some other ability. In here we can see a special block by this metal fan thing coming out of the prosthetic arm, which seems to be an ability that has to do with the prosthetic, obviously. I imagine this is used by timing it correctly to block heavier attacks and avoid chip damage. And I say time it because I highly doubt that we can just keep the shield up for more than a second or two. It should be timed with attacks that you might find hard to dodge, for example, and would rather block them. I think this is one of the more defensive abilities you can choose for your prosthetic. Here we see a really cool plunging attack, which can be aimed more accurately in comparison with Souls titles, and obviously no fall damage from Dark Souls. This is completely different. All in all, this suggests that we will be getting an upgrade or combo system that focuses on the intricacies of weapons rather than give us a huge number of weapons as seen in Dark Souls titles. So that's good. Less weapons, more intricate design is fine by me. And oh man, this is such a cool enemy attack. A big power bomb into getting thrown away violently. A devastating enemy, as expected from Fromsoft designers. Fighting these guys will be a lot of fun, that's for sure. Next we've this other curved sword wielding monster with imbued poison, and I love the way he imbued the poison. And the player is trying to deflect his heavy attacks, but fails miserably and dies. And what's interesting here is the correlation between the game title itself and the self-res mechanic. My guess here would be that since it's suggested that shadows die twice, It's not really the same as straight up having 2 lives, because that would be too cheap and it wouldn't be any fun. So what I interpret it as is that we get a second chance to kill whatever killed us by self-resurrecting with little to no health, and if successful, we can continue without dying, keeping in mind that the next death will kill us without the option to self-res again. Or we're just able to self-res for long enough to take revenge and then die. Maybe we'll self-res in shadow form of some sort, I'm not really sure. Therefore, the suggestion of the title is fulfilled, and you die twice. But I feel as though the former might be the case, more than the latter. So it's pretty much Tears of Denial from Dark Souls 3. But I'm sure there will be some kind of twist to it in a way that makes sense in the world of Sekiro. Also, stealth is definitely emphasized to be a viable approach in this game, as seen here. So that's a very welcome feature. Glad to see that in a Fromsoft game. It'll be interesting to see how stealth can change certain encounters and how you approach enemies. In the next scene, we see a centipede demon. Expected. Very expected from Fromsoft. I love centipedes. They're pretty terrifying if you ask me. With some kind of skeletal creature in the background. And notably, you can hear the Dark Souls 3 repause sound, I believe. I think that's the repause sound cue. Which brings back memories. And finally, a mounted enemy with a long halberd. Here we can see the utility of the grappling hook in the midst of battle, using it to close distances between the character and the target, to go in and land an attack, as well as jumping being a viable dodging option, as displayed here. And at the very end there, we get a confirmation that a form of jutsu or magic exists. In this case, the player uses fire-based attack coming out of the prosthetic as well, so that prosthetic seems to have a lot of utility, and the character uses the fire to ward off the horse and stun the enemy. I hope we get wind-based attacks this time around. I'm really into that kind of stuff. Wind powers are pretty cool. I made an entire build on Dark Souls 3 focused on wind, and it got the most views out of all my videos. Now let's talk about PvP. With regards to PvP, all we know so far is that there is an invasion system in which the invader will either spawn as a specific enemy from that specific area, or simply take control of one of the NPCs there in that area, but with a buff to indicate that it's an invader and not simply an NPC. We're not sure if the actual player characters can clash in combat. That could be in a separate PvP matchmaking mode similar to Dark Souls 3. At this point, I think it's safe to say that Fromsoft has plans for PvP, as they recognize that there's a high demand for it. And naturally, PvP will prolong the lifespan of the game, so I hope we can get some kind of info later to confirm PvP. Also, some form of co-op would be cool as well. If not in the single player story, then maybe in dungeons? I don't know. No sign of co-op so far, not even in the leaks. I mean, if they're aiming for co-op in the first place, we'll have to wait and see. I imagine they'll show more during this year's Tokyo Game Show, or in an independent From Software conference, like they did with Dark Souls 3. The Dark Souls 3 DLC, for that matter. Alright, so this had a few people worried, but I assure you, there's no reason to be worried. So, about the Activision part of the trailer, which I'm sure many of you are rightfully skeptical of. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is a spiritual successor to Tenchu, I believe, which is a game that Activision purchased the rights to from Sony, who originally published the game in Japan. Activision then sold the rights to From Software in 2004. From Software's rights agreement did not include games previously published by Activision, which could explain why Activision is publishing Sekiro, though I'm not sure how involved is Activision in Sekiro. I'm pretty sure that we're all hoping, and we insist, that Activision will have no further involvement beyond simply publishing the game in the West. And in terms of the reveal taking place on the Xbox conference, I highly doubt that there's any exclusivity deal going on, and that it's simply for increasing the viewership and the quality of the Xbox conference overall. So yeah, I don't think there's any necessary worry here. regarding Sekiro and the way they monetize it. I don't think there'll be microtransactions in the first place. That's not how Fromsoft does things. At least not in these kinds of games. Anyhow, that's all we've got so far. I can't wait for this game, obviously, as you can tell. And I bet all of us FromSoft fans feel the excitement of experiencing FromSoft interconnected level design in a clearly more open world game with more verticality than any of the previous Souls games. Why do I keep comparing it with Souls? Because clearly that's FromSoft's way of making action RPGs. And if you can't see the correlation between this and a Souls game, well, too bad. I can't wait to learn more about the combat and pretty much every other aspect of the game. Miyazaki has set a very high standard for FromSoft, and I trust that they won't disappoint. FromSoft is back. Miyazaki is back. And so, I'll see you guys after the next leak.